All right. You might notice also in my presentation here, I have some image descriptions. So if you're like not sure what's going on in these pictures and jars, I tried to put a little description on each slide of the pictures. So as Linda mentioned and gave a little bio about me, I am a community herbalist and medicine maker. I studied in a formal setting, studying Ayurveda, which is kind of like a sister science to yoga, some Indian medicine, as well as Chinese herbalism and some Western herbalism. And for the past few years, I don't know exactly when it started, but I also been studying Eastern European and Ashkenazi herbalism, and trying to put more of a Jewish lens on my herbal practice as well. I do work at a community clinic, so trying to work with a lot of different populations and people. Most of my practice is private consultations. So I do love, and you'll see why in a moment, I love to use the phrase, it depends, because a lot of herb questions, it just depends what's happening. And I don't believe in one size fits all. So yeah, here's 2 different jars of some herbal infusions, some big tea jars. A few things and thoughts to consider while there's a lot on this here, but things to consider as we begin talking. We're talking about anxiety, which is a little bit, might be a little activating. I just want to acknowledge, so emotions may arise as I talk or name things that might resonate in your body. And I just want to invite you to take extra special care of yourself. So maybe that's turning off your screen or getting a drink of water, petting a cat or a dog nearby. If anything feels uncomfortable, but please, hang out with us as we do, talk about these mental health topics. And I also want to name this presentation is just a fragment. I'm just really sharing a little bit of my perspective and where I'm coming from as an herbalist. And there's so much more. Like someone already was listing in the chat all these different herbs. There are so many awesome plants and herbs, especially if you're living in the Philippines or in Florida, in Ohio. Like we all have different plant friends. So yeah, I know that this isn't everything. And I heard this term once, like, we don't know what we don't know. And I like that when I'm learning is just to be open to new ideas and ahas and radical amazement. And also that herbalism might feel like, I say this, political work or unsettling work, because it's empowering to find an herb or a plant or a ritual or practice that works for you, and you don't maybe have to talk to a doctor about it. Some herbs you do, absolutely. And if you have a great relationship with a practitioner, I would recommend working with somebody. But it also feels a little on edge. People might have a stigma around herbs, calling you a witch, or there's a lot of like Yiddish terms I've been learning about in this new Ashkenazi herbalism book for the people who make the magic potions. But it's like a little less conventional. So I just want to name that it might feel a little radical, and go with it. And also remind everyone that while working and thinking about anxiety and stress, to really talk to a mental health practitioner if you're not already, especially after this over a year of living in a global crisis and pandemic. And I also just want to acknowledge, without going too deep or too political, just acknowledge what's happening right now in Israel-Palestine, and that there is a lot of violence and stress, I think, in some people's lives if you're connected to that part of the world. And just know and hope to take some time, if not now, but tonight, to think about family or people who might be over there struggling right now. And that leads me to my last thought to consider tonight. Well, okay, 2 more things. One is to dedicate your practice. This is And by practice, I mean our learning tonight. Something that I love and learned about in Judaism and studying and learning is to dedicate the learning experience to someone. So that could be, again, that this vague someone in the Middle East. This could be a blessed memory, someone who's passed in your life, a family member, someone who couldn't make it to this online session. And if you want to name that person or people in the chat, that would be awesome too, to bring them into this space. We can all dedicate this learning time. The last piece on here, this thoughts to consider, is my little illustration drawing here in this image on the right, which is what looks like a pie chart. It's actually my pretty quick sketch of the Hebrew calendar. It's the monthly calendar. If you're not familiar with the 12 months of the Hebrew calendar. Right now we're in this green section, which I'm calling spring. We are beginning tonight at sundown, is actually the first day of the month of Sivan. And I just wanted to really just show what spring looks like on the Hebrew calendar. I won't go too far into it, but if you enjoy learning and talking about the Hebrew calendar, I love that as well. So maybe that's a topic we can email or chat about at another time. But yeah, I just thought that was relevant for our learning tonight. So before I go to the next page, let's just take a deep breath in and out. Like let all that settle in, let yourself arrive here. And it looks like we have a dedication. Thank you for sharing. Sweet. Okay. So yeah, my first question I want to answer here is, what is herbalism? If you're not familiar with herbalism, this is my very short answer. I believe it's this relationship between humans or animals and plants. Other animals also use plants medicinally. And yeah, they have other animals do that too. But so yeah, the relationship between animals and plants. And I am also going to, when I'm talking about herbs or herbalism in this presentation, I'm referring to a lot of different plant parts. So I've listed those here: barks, rhizomes, roots, leaves, moss, lichen, flowers, fruits, thorns, buds, twigs, seeds, not just the herbaceous part of the plant. So if you're really into botany and you learn about like herbs, herbaceous and woody plants, we're talking about, yeah, all of them, not just the herbaceous ones. And this photo, this is some Hawthorne berries and a little, the thorn of the Hawthorne tree is also in my hand. They're very big and sharp. This is one from a farm in New York. There we go. Again, a very short answer to what is anxiety. Oh, and I also wanted to share or remind you all, like, I recognize that there's knowledge in this space too. So if anyone feels like they had this burning desire to share, have something to add, you can type it in the chat as well. So if you're like, I actually have another thought about what is herbalism or what is anxiety, feel free to add to the group. I feel like it can only benefit all of us to learn a little more. So my first response to, yeah, what is anxiety is, it's just a body's response to stress. And it can show up in a lot of ways and have a lot of activation points. Again, here's this term I mentioned before: it depends. So some people ask me as an herbalist, what do you recommend for anxiety? and I say always, it depends. You know, what kind of anxiety? Where is your anxiety? You know, is it in your head? Is it only present when you're about to go to sleep? does it show up in your stomach and your indigestion and maybe look like loose stool and diarrhea, or maybe constipation? Is it in your nervous system? Is it seasonal? So I'll just talk a little bit about some of these in hopes that maybe they resonate. But again, I hope they're not too activating. Sometimes even now I'm just like starting to think about anxiety, and I notice I'm not breathing as deeply, so like that anxiety, nervousness can show up in our breath. So one thing I want to bring awareness to is the season of spring, as I just showed on my little hand-drawn calendar. There's a lot of different a lot of different ideas or theories about spring. I don't even know if they're theories. Maybe they're real. Spring in some cultures, or when I learned in Ayurveda, spring is the windy season. It's the season of change, of transformation, of moving between seasons. So coming out of winter again, maybe this is not relevant in Florida. You all can let me know if I'm just too New England right now, but coming out of winter, where you maybe been a little slower and sluggish, and moving toward like the heat of summer. If you're a farmer or in agriculture, this is often a time when you plant a lot of seeds and seedlings, and they're pretty small and maybe a little bit vulnerable, and maybe you're seasonally you're really worried or dependent on the weather and the rains to come. I grew up in Nebraska, actually, and spring is tornado season, so that also brought its a lot of different anxieties and stress, and this like unsettling feeling or feeling uprooted. And for some, as I mentioned, the winter, if you've spent a lot of time on a couch or moving a little bit slower, and then to be uprooted and have to get up and maybe be a little more active, that can also be stressful, a time of change. So, and one thing I want to mention too about the Hebrew calendar, right now we're in the, if you've been following the Omer, we're in this 49-day period between Passover, which was about 6 weeks ago, and Shavuot, which is a harvest festival and holiday that happens next week. And during that time, Shavuot is a holiday of like receiving the written Torah, and also our grain, our wheat harvest. So between this liberatory, like this liberation holiday of Passover, for 49 days, we count every day for 49 days to get to our wheat harvest. And if you're reliant on that wheat to come on Shavuot, that could be really anxiety ridden in the spring worry. If you're trying to grow your wheat to have your bread and your challah and your food for the year. So the counting of the Omer, that counting is this really grounding practice of counting each day between those two holidays. So, okay, I'm going to move on to the head and mind real quick. Head and mind might look like chatty mind, where you're lying in bed wondering, did I get everything I needed to before tomorrow? Did I turn off the stove? Did I check all my boxes? And really moving, again, that energy up into the head, or a little bit further away from maybe the feet or grounded parts of the body. And then the stomach and indigestion might be really uncomfortable, might affect our eating habits and our cycles of eating and nourishing our bodies. The nervous system, it might just be overall feeling chills or feeling uncomfortable in your skin. And that can look a lot of different ways for a lot of people. Maybe not wanting to be touched, not wanting certain clothing to be in contact with our bodies, not wanting to be in certain environments. And I also just wanted to bring into, if you're not already like activated enough into this space, is just our traumas and how those can be a type of anxiety and lead to anxiety, environmental as well as ancestral traumas, things that we're not even aware of. Okay, I'm going to move forward. I'm getting anxious thinking about all these things. But I do want to bring our attention over to this lovely photo of some passion flower. This is actually grown in New York. It's a, it grows in other climates as well, but this is passion flower. It's the flower before the passion fruit. And the flower and the leaves, passion flower or passiflora. Maypop is a name for it as well. And really wonderful herb for a chatty mind, really calming. And they just look so beautiful. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about herbs. And I think I heard some of these already in the chat. Perfect. So, and in herbalism, we like to categorize things. Some herbs fall into multiple categories, and this is not a full list of categories of herbs, but one that I'm going to use for reference in a moment when we talk about specific plants, and just some fun names to try on. So even if you're muted, you could practice saying these words. Adaptogens. These are herbs and plants, and also some mushrooms fall in this category as well. There are herbs that help us adapt to stress, and yeah, they're awesome. They like really work with the body, and I use them a lot with clients with adrenal fatigue and anything from fatigue or insomnia, trouble sleeping, people who are trying to work their way off of coffee. If you're looking for some alternatives, adaptogens have this, they're just like this powerhouse that kind of help rebuild, not caffeinated, not a caffeinated plant, but just like kind of help give you this internal oomph to feel a little more solid. Sweet, I love this comment about maypop passion vines. Great for pollinators, lovely. Okay, so nervines are plants in general that calm the nervous system. Also, some sedative herbs fit into this category as well. So these are ones that just kind of feel like a little bit of an exhale when you take a drink of tea. I think chamomile is a pretty common, or lemon balm. We'll talk about some specifics, but just an overall calming of the nervous system. And some adaptogens are also nervines. Nutritives are nourishing herbs. These are plants and herbs that have really high mineral content and vitamin content. And so they're nourishing from like the, it's kind of just like giving your body that little like health boost without like a smoothie or a fresh fruit juice. It's a they're usually pretty green, and can give the body some nourishment so that it can think maybe a little more clearly, have a little more focus in the mind. And I'll mention some digestive herbs to help support digestion and elimination as well as assimilation, just helping the body process food and as well as emotion. There's a lot of emotion in our stomachs. And then carminatives. I didn't write on here, bitters would kind of fit between these two as well. Really popular Jewish herb category. But carminatives are often seeds or plants that also help with digestion and help reduce gas and flatulence. I don't know if anyone's ever felt so anxious or nervous that you get kind of gassy. It's very common in times of transition as well. So the spring and especially in the fall is another big transition time where we see a lot of anxiety show up. And then this isn't really an herb, but I just wanted to toss in here something I do work with a lot are flower and gem essences, which are vibrational medicine, working on the mental, spiritual, and emotional part of the body, because it's all connected. It's all part of our body. And when I think of those, it's like not quite aromatherapy. But in some ways remind me a little bit of the besami, the like spices during Havdalah, this like little smell and emotional support. And here's an image of some mullein plant. This is a biannual, really soft, fuzzy dock plant that grows in most places I've lived in this country. Sometimes confused with lamb's ears, but it's different, very different plant. Nice, and this one would be a nutritive. It's full of a lot of vitamins and minerals, and also great for the lungs and congestion. All right. So we'll share a bit about some specific plants, and then I'm gonna ask you all some questions in a moment. So I hope you feel ready. Not a quiz or anything, just some interest. Well, first, oh wait, maybe it says it on the bottom. Oops, I was gonna ask if anyone knew what plant this was on the in the photo, but I made a mistake. This is all right. So I wanted to share some nourishing or nutritive plants. Stinging nettle, that's what this is a photo of here on the right. This grows pretty abundantly around wooded areas and sometimes near rivers. It does have little hairs on it, and it does sting a little bit. Some people have kind of relate it to, I just learned about this. There's a type of therapy with bees where you intentionally get stung, almost like an acupuncture point, to help with arthritis and some movement. I'm not recommending it, but I'm just saying the stings might not be also that bad. But when you dry this plant, the stinging nettle, you can eat it also as well as a spring food, but when you dry it, it doesn't sting. Super high in iron and magnesium, calcium, really great nutritive. Is that the word I use? Nourishing herb. Also wonderful for seasonal allergies as well. Great spring tonic. So these first 5, stinging nettle, oat straw, red clover, mullein, medium, and alfalfa are really great nourishing herbs. And herbs that I would make in an infusion or a tonic that you could really drink every day, almost every day. There's a couple tweaks I would recommend if you stinging nettle is really high in iron. So if you're at a point in your life where you don't need a lot of iron, then you could cut that one out. But you might use it to make a pesto or a spring salad, not salad, but a sauce. So yeah, these herbs are all really high in vitamin D and K, vitamin A. And the idea with the seasonal allergies is that when the body is, if you have those seasonal outdoor allergies, if the body is a little more nourished, full of its vitamins and minerals, and hydrated, drinking a lot of these teas will make you more hydrated too, then some say we can prevent those allergies a little better, or be more have a little more defense for them to come in. And then I saw someone mention this on the chat. Ashwagandha is an adaptogen. It's related to tomato. It's in the nightshade family. So if you have a nightshade allergy, I do not recommend it. But however, it is a nervine. It's calming. It's an adaptogen, helping adapt to stress. It's really energizing as well, and grounding. It's the root. And we talk a lot about in herbalism, many roots. Well, on the next slide, I'll show you more too. Roots can be really grounding. And that's just this, again, this when we're in transition and things are moving in a season, changing, and it's maybe a little more windy, a root can ground us metaphorically. And maybe not. And really, the roots kind of remind us of the spine, our bones. Another adaptogen is holy basil, or some call tulsi. It's an Ayurvedic herb, and it's an adaptogen. It's also considered really sacred and used in preparation for prayer. So if you have a daily practice of prayer. That might be a nice grounding herb to relieve some stress and bring you into your meditative practice. And then not herbs, but mushrooms and the fungi category here are reishi and chaga, just two that I mentioned. There's a lot of mushrooms. Turkey tail is great and very prevalent around here, and lion's mane. These are also adaptogens, great for the heart, and full of some nutrients. Okay, here's me smelling some lemon balm. Okay, so yeah, I'll quick. This is not a full list of nervines and digestives, but hopefully I tried to choose some that might be familiar to you, that you might already have in a tea cabinet or a spice cabinet. So I did mention oat straw on the page before. Oat or avena is oat straw is the stem of the plant, and the milky oats are the seeds before the rolled oat, which you might have in your oatmeal. Also great plant if you're not allergic to include in your diet for some anxiety and some spring groundedness. But yeah, milky oats, an awesome nervine and calming for the nervous system is what that means. Lemon balm, it's in the mint family. That's what I'm smelling here in this picture. This is my version of aromatherapy. And then it's also a helpful digestive. A lot of plants in the mint family, so things that are related to mint. And if you're into botany, mint plants have a square stem and usually smell like mint or smell pretty fragrant, and they have a specific type of flower. A lot of herbs are mints. Rosemary is a type of mint, oregano, thyme, lavender, lemon balm, and I put garden mint here as a great digestive, kind of can settle an upset stomach. Fennel seed is a carminative and digestive aid. Skull cap or scutellaria, that's a Chinese herb, also in the mint family, great for insomnia and also nervine, calming, and a little bit of more of a sedative. Rose petals are awesome calming plant, great for the heart, great for grief, if your anxiety is related to grief. If you're just, and I say grief, like maybe you're missing winter, maybe you're missing someone in your life, a place. Linden, leaf and flower, another nervine, also maybe a little bit digestive support. Maypop, great, as I said before, that chatty mind, spinning, wondering, thinking a lot, making lists. Ginger root, preferably the fresh root, but dried is okay for some people. Great digestive plant. Chamomile. I think people forget about chamomile, and I think there's a reason it's in a lot of people's tea drawers. Yeah, it's nice. It's a little bit mild bitter, helpful for digestion, settling an upset stomach and the nervous system. And burdock root, another digestive aid. Oh yeah, the roots here I mentioned, burdock and dandelion. Those are really common around here. Again, I'm not familiar as much with Florida, but really grounding. Cool. So I'm just going to pause here. I'd love to hear from you all in the chat if you feel like sharing. Good questions. Yeah, just looks like you all have started. What questions are you taking with you, or do you have stirring up? What herb or herbs do you feel excited to try, just from those little bit of information, and maybe what's something you learned so far? You don't have to answer all three, but just putting it out there. I'd love to take a couple moments to digest. Okay, so I'm going to share some recipes. I know this looks like a lot of information on one page, but again, I'm reminding you, you'll get this information after, so you don't have to write down. And I'm hoping this might answer some questions that I'm seeing too about dosage and Oh yeah, good questions. Yeah, some questions about dosage and types of herbs to use. So this first, yeah, right here is just some super general ratios. The plants that I've listed um, in this presentation, I want to say most, except I'll just name out ashwagandha is one herb on here that has a lot of, it's contraindicated with some prescription medications. And stinging nettle was the one I mentioned. If you don't need a lot of iron in your diet or your body, is one to maybe avoid, but the rest are all are not contraindicated, which means they can be combined with pharmaceutical drugs. I purposely chose those. That's purposely chose these plants. If you have specific questions, you can also message me after about specific drug use, drug interactions. So yeah, so I wanted to just give a general ratio and use some visual aids here. I'm not sure if you can see my screen, I hope you can, but generally I use about a tablespoon of plant material, dried plant material, to a cup of water. And this is just a tea bag you might purchase, is usually a little less than a tablespoon for reference. And I said at the bottom here, experiment with ratios as far as for flavor and strength. Some herbs, especially if they're bitter, it might take a little bit longer to adapt to the flavor of it if you haven't had a lot of bitter herbs. Yeah, okay, I got another question. Okay, I'll mark, just write down another question that came in the private chat. Yeah, so a cup of chamomile tea with an upset stomach, or lemon balm, or some rose petals, or some of those plants I mentioned are nervines, could be easily made in a cup at home. I brought some strainers to just show you. This is a type of, maybe I will actually stop sharing my screen for just a moment so you can see a little better. Here's a type of strainer that could be used for making a loose leaf tea at home. You don't have to buy this. These are like $6 or something. This is like 50 cents at a hardware store, and I think works just as well. But generally I'll put just a little bit of tea of dried herbs in a cup or in a strainer or in a cup with water like this, float it around, and then pour it through a strainer. I will say that, yeah, so somebody had a question about, and I'll just answer this now, about where to get the herbs. Sourcing can be tricky. If you have access to a farmer, there are a lot of these plants probably and possibly grow on your farmer's land. A lot of these are considered weeds that might be on the edges or cover crops. And so if you go to the farmer's market and you have a farmer that maybe you already have a relationship with, you might consider asking them or calling them ahead of time and see if there's a way you could do some kind of sale. You could also work directly with a clinical herbalist or an herbalist in your area who might be able to provide the herbs for you, and they've done the vetting and figured out where to get the herbs. You could ask your grocery store to purchase them for you. I have found that a lot of, not a lot, but some like Asian markets, Indian markets, or Mexican stores often have a lot of loose herbs. It's a little more cultural. The names might be in Spanish, and I also have a Spanish and English herb guide if you need help with that. but I have found really great luck finding herbs there. And yeah, that's all I'll share. I'm going to go back to the slide to just, because I don't have any more visuals. But so a cup of tea, this might be something you're already familiar with. I'll just name a few tips and tricks. If you have your tea blend in a cup of hot water, I do recommend putting a cover on the top of your tea while it's steeping. And I recommend this because the volatile oils, or some people call the essential oils. A lot of people call essential oils. What am I talking about? A lot of people call it essential oils. Those are the some of those volatile oils escape from the cup of tea. When the lid is off, it kind of gets distilled with the steam. So you want to keep that part of the plant in the cup to drink, and you'll steep anywhere from 5 to 20 minutes. I say longer for roots, barks, and seeds. However, if the taste is too strong for you or too bitter, then you'll need to experiment a little bit. But at minimum 5 minutes will be great to break down some of that plant material. And then I just to get rid of that plant material when you're done. I don't recommend a double steep. And add some honey, of course. If you like honey, to sweeten it up. You don't have to save your honey for Rosh Hashanah. You can be eating it all the time. And have a cup of tea. Another option for more of an infusion, like a longer infusion or cold brew, again, not caffeinated, is your nourishing herbs. I mentioned the nettles, alfalfa, oat straw, some of those really good spring, just spring cleanse diuretics, dandelion leaf. You can put all your herbs in a jar with cold filtered water or just room temperature water and leave it for about 8 hours before drinking. And again, use the same ratio, 1 tablespoon of herbs. It's going to look like a lot. So I say 1 to 8 ounce, but I would probably make about I'd make a lot at once, maybe 32 ounces at a time. So that'd be 4 tablespoons of herbs. And you could drink that throughout the day, and that's really hydrating as well. So this is actually one I started earlier today. It's what it looks like. It's a jar with some herbs. You probably really can't see too much of it, but and then you'd strain it the same way and just put it in the refrigerator. It doesn't have a very long shelf life. So you can make like a big jar of it. I do recommend glass if possible, or stainless steel. I don't recommend ever making anything hot in plastic. Again, if that's all you have, go for it. But yeah, glass is preferred. And then a solar or lunar infusion is where you can do the cold brew. Maybe you've made a sun tea before. You could do the same kind of thing, making that cold brew recipe, but put your jar, your herbs outside, uncovered, soaking up the sunshine, or under the moon if you feel connected to a certain phase of the moon, if you're into that. Like today is a new moon. And leave outside for a few hours until it tastes good. If you do hot water, you don't have to have it out as long. If you're doing the cold brew, I'd recommend that anywhere from like 6 to 8 hours. But again, experiment and play. This is, I know, very not beginner, but it's basic in there. I appreciate everybody's questions. I know there's a lot, and that's all. I'm gonna pause there. Oops, we're not gonna go to that one.
Amazing. Thank you, Chelsea. I see we have a lot of questions in the chat, so let's take some time. I know you've been keeping track. I'm also keeping track, and maybe we can move forward. So maybe a good place to start is a lot of people have asked about how you consume these herbs and if we can consume them outside of teas.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there are a lot of ways to take herbs. Behind me, this is actually a cabinet of my apothecary of tinctures. These are herbal extracts, and that's often what I use for my clinical practice. And I do that one for ease of having something quick and easy to take because yeah, maybe we don't all want to wait 6 hours or have all the equipment in the kitchen to make our herbs if we're using it in a more medicinal way. There are capsules some people take, which are like little pills of herbs. I don't do though in my practice as much. I love I love being able to taste the herbs, and I think that's a really important part, to taste the bitterness or taste the sweetness in a plant. And if that's what's available to you, then that's awesome. Yeah, so capsules, teas, tinctures are usually alcohol based. I also make some non-alcoholic. So there's or vinegars, infused vinegars. Any of those nourishing herbs I mentioned can also be infused in like apple cider vinegar and a little honey and use it as a salad dressing.
Awesome. Can you tell us about a good tea recipe to sleep at night?
Oh yeah, yeah, sure. I'll just name one that comes like right to mind right now, which is I love rose. I know that's like a love hate thing for a lot of people, but I love rose petals. Um, but yeah, I would yeah, oat straw, or excuse me, milky oat, chamomile, mint, and rose petals. And I would just say just a little bit of rose. So like yeah, if you have those loose things.
Amazing. And then we also have someone who's asking about anxiety after grief.
Mm, yeah.
What would you recommend?
Yeah. Grief is a big topic and something I have like a lot of remedies for. Again, rose. I think maybe that's why I love rose so much. Mullein is a really fabulous plant if you haven't worked with it, and interestingly, it's like the leaves of it are actually kind of shaped like lungs, and in Chinese medicine, the lungs are associated with grief. And I think there's a sweet little correlation or doctrine of signatures they call it. But yeah, grief it's like I think a lot about like lung and heart tending. Um, I saw someone mention elderberry. That's coming up right now in this thought as well. Elderberry, mullein, elderflower, um, yeah, lemon balm, linden, a lot of hawthorn. I know I'm just naming plants, but those are yeah, those are some herbs to look for. I know even like some like off the shelf teas like celestial seasoning sleepy time tea, it has linden in it, and so there are ways to find these herbs. They're kind of like tucked in, and as well as flower essences. Those are things to explore if you haven't for grief.
Thank you. And early on, someone asked about maypop. How do we eat maypop, or how do we use it?
Yeah. Yeah, well, so the fruit, I think people in more tropical areas can eat it. Passion fruit. And then I've only worked with I've made tincture mostly out of the dried leaf or the fresh leaf and flower, and take it as like an internal tincture or a dried for tea blend. I've never eaten the flower or the leaf. Just drank the extract. And if anyone else wants to share in the chat if you've eaten those cool looking flowers, let me know.
Amazing. And do you use these, or do they have the same effect if we use them as spices?
Hmm. Yeah, of course. Yeah, I think a lot of, I mean, that's, yeah, why they're in our food. Um, yeah, like when I was mentioning earlier, some of the, yeah, like ginger, fennel, there are, yeah, they're like medicinal herbs that end up in our spice cabinets. We put fennel in the food that's a little bit hard to digest, or I remember when I was younger, my grandma always made mint, made a mint jelly with the lamb. And I was like, oh yeah, like lamb is heavy and delicious and a little hard to digest. And then we get this like cooling mint, like support with it.
Amazing. I guess the last question that I have is for those of us who are a little bit lazy and we're very interested, but we don't necessarily have the time to create these blends from scratch. Do you have any recommendations for us?
Hmm. Yeah, that's a great question. Um, yeah, I would again talk to. You might take a little effort to explore some local farmers. It looks like someone put someone in the chat. Um, yeah, there are a lot of herb companies and herbalists online who make blends, like a sleepy blend or a digestive blend or a grief anxiety blend. Um, if you're looking for teas specifically. Um, and I wouldn't say you're lazy. You just have different priorities. You know, like you want to spend your time doing other things. And then, yeah, I guess that's it. I do. I will say I wish I could plug something, but it's like not going to be happening much longer anymore. But I was part of a monthly tea subscription box that came out for the first month of every Hebrew calendar, every Hebrew month. So like today, the new tea came in, but we're going to take a break for this next Shemitah year. Um, but yeah, there's stuff like that online too. Things sent to your door.
Amazing. I know you received some questions privately, so I want to give you a few minutes in case we haven't covered them.
Yeah. Oh, cool. Yeah, someone put in there Whole Foods, Trader Joe's. Yeah, there are a lot of teas out there. I forgot about that. Trader Joe's does have some tea blends, huh? Um, yes, I lost the question. Oh yeah, someone just asked about side effects of the herbs and the things like the nutritives or those nourishing herbs that are highly recommended in the spring, especially the nettles, the alfalfa, the oat straw. Some effects you might have is you might pee more often, not necessarily because they're diuretics, but because you're drinking a lot more fluid. Um, and um, and also just moving, like the lymphatic system is getting a little my massage, if that was the thing that's happening. So you might just like feel things moving around. I notice some people I know who start to use some of those nourishing herbs are a little more weepy or teary-eyed, and that's just like the waters moving coming out of winter. Winters, our bodies tend to hold a lot more water, and then yeah, and then some of the other herbs you'll just have to you'll see they might make you, side effects might be that you feel more calm, you might sleep a little better, you might feel more amorous toward your partner or your child. And if you're feeling, any pain, that I would recommend stopping, or indigestion. But I tried to just present some plants today that felt pretty universally um, over the counter, I guess, just safer, more comfortable. And I also, somebody asked me about working with someone, and I do, yeah, if you are looking for something more long term, not just a cup of tea before one night that you're a little restless, yeah, definitely work with an herbalist. Some acupuncturists also work with herbs as well. That might be more covered under insurance if paying for an herbalist is not.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Chelsea, for this wonderful workshop. And thanks again to our co-sponsors this evening, the Greater Miami Jewish Federation, the Program in the Study of Spirituality, and the Stephen J. Green School of International and Public Affairs. I want to invite everyone to join us for our next event in this series on May 25th at 7 p.m. This program is called The Magic of Art Making and Mindfulness. And the first 50 participants to register by Monday, May 17th will receive a complimentary supply kit So I'm going to put the registration details into the chat. And I also want to say that we'll be sending out a follow-up email with information that we covered in tonight's program. Chelsea's also been very kind and put together a guide for us. So thank you all. Thanks again, Chelsea, and we hope to see you very soon.
Okay, thanks. And I just put my contact if you all have more questions. Happy to try to answer.
Incredible.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Goodbye.